public hearing of the Senate Rural and Regional Affairs and Transport References Committee. The committee is hearing evidence for its inquiry into the road transport industry, and I welcome you all here today. This is a public hearing and a Hansard transcript of the proceedings is being made. Before the committee starts taking evidence, I'll remind all witnesses that in given evidence that you are protected by parliamentary privilege, it is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence to a committee. Excuse me. The committee prefers all evidence to be given in public, but under the Senate's resolutions, witnesses have the right to request to be heard in private session. It is important that witnesses give the committee notice if they intend to ask to give evidence in camera. If a witness objects to answering a question, the witness should state the ground upon which objection is taken. Oh, sorry about that. The committee will determine whether it will insist on an answer, having regard to the ground that is claimed. If the committee determines to insist on an answer, a witness may request the answer be given in camera. Such a request may, of course, also be made at any other time. If you agree to provide an answer to a question taken on notice during the hearing, please note that answers are due by close of business Monday the 10th of May 2021, and I remind people to ensure their mobile phones are either turned off or switched to silent. Finally, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank all those who have made submissions and sent representatives here today. And I now welcome representatives from the Department of Home Affairs and Australian Border Force. And I believe someone is joining us, Mr. Brezzo, via video conference. Are you there, Mr. Brezzo?
Good morning, Chair. Phil Brezzo.
Good morning.
South and Border.
Thank you. Coming through loud and clear. So, gentlemen, I will get you to give your names and state the capacity in which you appear today before I give you the opportunity to go to an opening statement.
Michael Willard, First Assistant Secretary, Immigration Programs Division, Department of Home Affairs.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator. Commander Ben Biddington, Australian Border Force from National Enforcement Operations.
Thank you.
And Chair Phil Brezzo, Assistant Commissioner, South and Enforcement Operations, Australian Border Force.
Thank you, Mr. Brezzo. Now, I will offer anyone to make an opening statement should you wish to. Is there anyone want to make an opening statement?
No, thanks.
Oh, look, great. Thanks very much. Look, we'll get straight into it because time is of the essence. Did you see the video of the Channel 7 report? I think it was Channel 7 that I sent to the department during the week.
Yes.
Okay.
Senator, I've seen it.
Thanks very much. And what it is for those listening, and trust me, it's being beamed around Australia, and there's a lot of truckies tuning in as we speak. This was the incident, and I'm sorry I haven't got the copy in front of me and all the excitement. I've left it on my desk. A couple of years ago, I believe a 12-tonne truck coming down the mountain into Wollongong. Is it Mount Uzi, I think it's called, where the truck driver was on the wrong side of the road, speeding, completely doing everything possibly they could wrong, and thank God, ploughing into a McDonald's store and car park, smashing through cars and then into the building and not even killing anyone. Thank God for that. You're aware, you saw that to the end, everyone? Did you see that, Commander?
Yes, I did, Senator.
Okay. So what it raised, excuse me, and then there was a piddly little fine after it. But where it raises a concern for this committee is we had a Senate inquiry into road safety a number of years back. The department were extraordinarily helpful after some prodding, and I'm not blaming the department officials. I think the department officials are very honourable. The job that you guys do is one of the best, and we thank you very much for your service and all the officers underneath you. But the political stonewalling and frustration I want to share with you. So there are a number of letters, and I'd sent off to Minister Dutton at the time and Mr. Pizzullo. Excuse me, Mr. Pizzullo is still the Secretary at the moment. And it started from, there is a bit of preamble, but I do need to go through it so I understand. There, back in 2016, I think it was, there was a Scott's B-double stuck under the M5. A couple of drivers peak out traffic, couldn't get under the bridge. That's not a sin, and truckies get caught like that sometimes if they're new to another state. What the sin was, they couldn't reverse the B-double out. Subsequently, they jackknifed the B-double, traffic jam, and you could imagine what was going on the road. When the Channel 7 crew rolled up to interview the drivers, they were two foreign drivers. One wouldn't even get out of the cab, and the other one was interviewed when the interviewer said, "Do you think you should be able to back the truck up?" His response was no. So just to give you some insight, gentlemen, as you probably well may know anyway, if you get a licence, one of the things you have to do is be able to reverse it. And they couldn't do that. Subsequently, this committee got hold of it and we investigated and we found, we went back to the source. I wrote to the minister and I said that it was reported that the driver was on 457 visas, both of them, which was incorrect. And I have the letters here where the minister came back to me and thanked me for writing to him, but in my words, not his, that I had no idea what I was talking about and he wasn't on a visa and it was all bull dust. So then I asked the committee, the department to come along, to which I had said to the officers, it's all on the Hansard, you can't leave until you tell me what visa the drivers were on. And it came back they were on student visas. One was on a student visa, one was on a student assisted visa. Are you up to speed with that, gentlemen? Has that been brought to your attention before you're here today?
Senator, I'm aware of the correspondence in 2016.
Great.
Your letter to Mr Dutton and Mr Dutton's response.
That's right, thank you very much. And I have the officer's name, and I think it was Mr Wright, I think it was, who came and gave evidence to tell us this. And then I quizzed the department and said, are we serious that we think that we would have foreign students and foreign student partners who may be studying to find a cure for cancer or something, but on the weekend they do B-double runs between Brisbane and Sydney just for something to do. So I was very disappointed. So what I'd written then was to seek under my chairmanship of this committee, that I strongly wanted to urge when I wrote to Mr Dutton, that we wanted to take this further. There needed to be some investigation because there is exploitation of our visa system and our licensing system. And I know you guys don't do licensing. The letter I got back from Minister Dutton, and I'm sure you'll be aware of it, on the 25th of February, said to me that he thanked me and all that, yep, as per usual, but said that for privacy reasons he was unable to discuss the particulars of the visa holder's circumstances. Why would that be the case? Could you tell me why we couldn't? I didn't want to know the person's name.
Senator, it'd be speculative on my part. I've seen the correspondence. I don't have the background details of the case. But as a general principle under privacy obligations, we won't reveal an individual's circumstances based on information they've given to the department unless that's more widely known. But I don't know the particulars of that matter.
I'll give you the opportunity, Mr Willard, but I find that I can't accept that answer because it was your department and your acting Deputy Secretary at the time who gave us the evidence that these drivers, no names, were on student visas. And all I wanted to keep raising, I want to continue to keep raising with you, is that, excuse me, one of the recommendations that came from that previous report of this committee was that foreign drivers, we should not just accept that they have a licence. In this case, they should be tested properly. In this case, you will say there's nothing to do with you, it's the state licensing departments, and I get that, but they still get into the country on visas. And I am strongly of the belief, and I'd be keen to hear your answer, all of you, that when we raise issues of road safety and they're here on a visa, why wouldn't the department dabble into saying, well, what is going on? How many of these visas are being used? How many are on the highways? How many are in the road transport industry? Not that you police road safety.
Senator, if I could speak about the visa system, I'll probably give the context that you're looking for. As you know, we have a wide range of visas that we grant to people based on broadly what their purpose for coming to Australia is. In certain circumstances, we grant visas for employer-sponsored work.
Sure.
And in that circumstance, there's an assessment of the individual's skills and background and qualifications and capacity to be able to obtain relevant licensing in order to be able to work, which is the purpose of the visa in that circumstance. So that's a work visa. For a student visa, the assessment goes to the individual's intent to study. They need to be enrolled with a registered provider. There's a whole range of rules under the Education Services for Overseas Students Act that how the providers interact with those students. We administer under the Migration Act, we administer the student visa regulations. Student visa regulations include a condition that allows students to work.
Yep.
The condition limits the amount of time they can work. It's 40 hours per fortnight during semester, and it's unlimited during course breaks. The condition doesn't specify the type of work they may or may not do.
Sure.
But simply that period. And the intent around that condition is going back again to the purpose of the visa, which is to be a student. And so that's why the work is limited, so that they can do their studies.
And Mr Willard, I accept that, and I have no problem. This committee accepts that, and we have no problem with that. And we don't expect you to drag resources away from chasing drugs and all. We understand all that. But when a Senate committee identifies that there is exploitation of the visa system, and we followed the system through Scott's Transport, that there are a number of foreign-based operators who were employing their own people, and I'm the first one, as everyone else on this committee used to say, this is a magnificent country, and we've all come, most of us have come from somewhere else, or our relatives have, and we want everyone to come and enjoy the privileges of living and working in Australia. But from a road safety point of view, when we've got licences being dished out, which the Queensland government addressed, and congratulations to the Queensland government when I contacted them, and there was 125 show causes and about 80 odd licences were handed back. Does that not ring bells within the department? Not that I expect you to run around and chase up every visa to make sure that people are telling the truth, they're doing what they are saying, but when we highlight that there is inconsistencies within the road transport industry, because we've now got another one. And that's not the only one. And I don't have the proof. I wish I had the proof, Mr Willard and Commander Biddington and Mr Brezzo, to say, here it is. I've got Indian drivers contacting me who are so frightened to talk to tell me that they're all students being employed in one transport company in Melbourne, but he's that terrified he won't tell me which transport company. And that sends bells going off in my alarm. It's Indian owned, and the alarms in my head is, my God's sake, how is this being rorted? But I can't investigate that. You guys can. So I'll come back to you, Mr Willard, and Commander Biddington and Mr Brezzo. Why has not the department thought, if someone's going to get run over by a road train or killed by a B-double or something like that by drivers that aren't licensed properly, and we know they come in on a visa, surely, gentlemen, you have the ability to follow that rabbit down the hole.
Senator, perhaps I could talk about some of the work we do
Sure.
in terms of maintaining compliance, because the issue there is
Yep.
about, as I understand it, is people who are intending to use the visa for a different purpose to which it was issued.
People lie. Yep.
Now, in that circumstance, though, if that individual is working within the limitations of the work condition, then there's not a breach of the visa conditions.
Absolutely, I understand that.
And then I might ask my colleagues from Australian Border Force to talk a little bit about the enforcement work that they do. In respect of the student visas, we look across the world at risk, and we look at particular parts of the world that represent more risk, and that determines the intensity with which we process an application. It's known as an evidence level regime. So based on where the student's coming from and which institution they're going to, and what we know about the performance of students who have those characteristics, we will process more intensively. If we know it's a low risk combination of institution and source area, then the processing is a lot less intense than if we know it's a riskier application, in which case we ask a lot more questions and require a lot more evidence to make a determination that someone is indeed a genuine student. If we don't find they're genuine, then we refuse the application.
No, I understand.
When they're here, on top of that, there's a regime that requires education providers to report students who aren't satisfactorily progressing in their course, and that then triggers a process for cancellation. So the providers themselves also have a role in keeping us informed that student visa holders are indeed studying as they said they would. So that's I guess the visa side of the operation, how we manage the compliance elements in the student visa program. We also have enforcement operations, which sit with Australian Border Force, and I might ask my colleagues to speak on those.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Senator. So from a compliance and enforcement point of view, there are two key pathways, I suppose, by which the Australian Border Force might address those issues. One looks along the lines of persons who are unlawful non-citizens, and that's not what we're addressing in this instance. And the other is then to do with lawful non-citizens who may be working, for example, in this instance, in breach of their visa conditions. The Australian Border Force and more broadly through the department have a range of referral mechanisms by which allegations, matters of broader systemic concern can be raised and then referred through ultimately to the compliance investigations areas for action. There are a range of tools then available through the compliance areas, and they're applied in a layered process. And that could range from things such as education and awareness visits to employers, noting that there are obligations on employers not to employ lawful non-citizens in breach of visa conditions, and also can involve education visits to the employees themselves to ensure that they understand the conditions of their visas and are acting accordingly. There's an online system known as the Visa Entitlement Verification Online, which allows individuals to check their status and to understand the conditions under which they can work. And then having looked at those range of education and awareness activities, from there it's quite possible where breaches are identified to issue illegal worker warning notices through to the employers, to take action directly against lawful non-citizens who are working breach of conditions, through the issuing, for example, of a notice of intention to cancel a visa, and ultimately then progressing through to cancellation.
Sure, and Commander, and I appreciate all that, and I don't want to witch hunt on every Indian truck driver. Not at all. There are some magnificent contributors to the Australian economy from Indian descent, and they're very decent people, and I've met many of them. But what I'm trying to lead to, I'm seeing a system here that there are, and I'm thinking is a common thread, that we have heard evidence in this committee that unfortunately there are so many instances of drivers coming from the subcontinent who can't back the trucks. There was one yesterday, didn't know where the dip switch was for the high beam. I've had postages of white Volvos. I don't know why they're all white Volvos, or mainly white Volvos, but there's also blue ones. Don't worry about that in Kenworth. But overtaking on double white lines where truck drivers are on the radio screaming at the drivers, then photographed who the drivers are. So what I'm trying to get to is I honestly believe there is some racket out there without the proof, because they're too frightened to tell me, that I believe the visa system, and I would love you to go, if there's the opportunity for you to investigate and say, Senator, you got it completely wrong and you need to correct that record in Hansard, because I'll be the first one to put my hand on my heart, that I believe that the student visa system is being rorted, and I believe it's being rorted by some of the worst people who are exploiting their own people here in Australia. So I go back to my the letters between the Minister and myself, and the Minister at the time, and when we proved when his department actually, see, what annoyed me was I got the wrong visa, and the Minister thought he was so clever telling me what a fool I was because I was so way out of whack, but then I had to drag it out of the Senate inquiry out of the officers, the truth. The Minister didn't even have the decency to say, Senator, with due respect as the chair of the committee that's looking into road safety and the other senators on here, I can advise you the driver was not on a 457, but he was on a student. So they think they're clever because they try to hide everything. Thank God for the honest officers from the department that sit across the table and tell the truth. So then he writes back to me, an employer is responsible for ensuring that the employee has the appropriate skills, yet pass the buck to the employer. Then it's the requirements of obtaining a licence to operate a vehicle are a matter for individual state authorities, pass the blame on to the states. At no stage did the Minister or Mr Pizzullo say, well, hang on, we have a responsibility if we're issuing visas and people aren't doing what they said they're doing, or at least following up to try and find out. Gentlemen, I won't ask you for a comment on it, but you can see where I hope you can see where I'm going. Because you see, as chair of the committee, I also wrote back. So I wrote as an individual senator, then I wrote as a chair, pleading with the minister to look into what we'd found as the evidence that had come out of here. And I'm just paraphrasing, I can give you copies of it, you've probably got it. And I summed up in saying, in light of this evidence, the committee calls for an investigation into the abuses of the student visa classification by the Department of Immigration and Border Protection with particular respect to this case. And I said, I look forward to your response. Back in 2016, and this case was the M5 Scots Transport one. That Scots fixed up themselves, don't worry. I'm still waiting, the committee, you don't have to talk to me, but the committee's still waiting for a response from the minister. Anyway, he's off to greener pastures or whatever he may be. When these complaints or these issues come in, what's the process of handling them? How do you do this in the department? The Senate has written to the department saying we think there's an issue because your office has told us there was an issue. Well, what do you do?
When there's a issue raised by a committee, we'd look at the issue and assess whether the issue is one that we can address. And I don't have the specifics of the one you just mentioned, Senator, but in the broad, in respect of integrity within the student visa program, we do twice annually run this risk matrix through the system, which determines the evidence levels, which then determines the way in which we process, the intensity with which we process visas. As I said, we still refuse student visas where we're not satisfied that the individual is a genuine temporary entrant. In respect of the matter you raised where people are concerned about coming forward, I think it'd be worthwhile pointing out that we do have an agreement with the Fair Work Ombudsman where individuals who are concerned about workplace exploitation can come forward to the Ombudsman, and through that agreement we won't be taking action in respect of their visa around any breaches of work rights because they've raised an exploitation issue. So there's an avenue there for visa holders who are concerned about workplace exploitation to come forward and not to be threatened with a visa cancellation by an employer.
Sure.
So that's another avenue.
Mr. Willard, I respect that, thank you. But where my frustration is here is the committee was wanting that if we had two drivers in a two-up operation running a B double between Brisbane and Sydney, who had they got their licence. It was rorted. It's all proved. It's all there. There was a corrupt RTO I think it was on the border somewhere, Tweed Heads or somewhere like that, and that was sorted out by the Queensland government. But is there not an alarm bell that would go off in the department that says, hang on, do we think it's just only two here? Who was the employer? How many other employees are under the same circumstances? And am I right? You didn't even look.
I'm not able to answer that in respect of that one from 2016, but I can say any information that comes in we do consider. We run intelligence analysis, we run risk analysis over our caseload all the time, looking for trends. The other question we have to ask ourselves is what are the powers available for us to deal with that particular circumstance? Sure. And again, I'm not referring to that circumstance because I don't know the details, but if it was a circumstance where a student was indeed properly licensed and driving within the limitations of the work condition that's on the student visa, that in itself would not be a grounds to cancel the visa, provided they're also maintaining their progress in their studies. If a temporary visa holder is convicted of a criminal offence, then there's an opportunity for us to take action in respect of that. Okay, well they were. So, Mr. Willard, the case of the two Scots Transport ones, and I still struggle with this, out on the highway with 50-odd tonne juggernaut flying down the highway, couldn't even back it. I don't even know how they drove it forward, probably just good luck that they got there without running anyone over. But there's cross-agency conversations. Was there not an alarm bell that went off in Home Affairs and Border Security that says, oh my God, and then contacted the appropriate, with the workplace ombudsman, whoever it would have to be, to say,
Ladies and gentlemen, here is an issue that's been raised by a Senate inquiry. Here is the evidence we gave to the Senate inquiry. Oh, and by the way, we're going to send our people out to follow this up the supply chain. Nothing happened. And I know you're going to sit there because it was 2016. I'm still raising these questions with you. And I'm looking forward to, by May the 10th at the close of business, the answers coming back to questions on notice. Okay?
So you're looking for an answer in respect of the two individuals from 2016?
Oh,
or
and the one that's come down the hill, and how the hell they didn't kill anyone out of Wollongong there. Yes, please, I am. But I also want to know, why wasn't that gone up the chain? Why was there not an investigation? Do we honestly think, and I keep saying this, gentlemen, but these two drivers just stumbled upon a truck that's owned by a fellow countryman who happened to be subcontracting out of the Brisbane depot for Scott's Transport, who have now sorted out that mess. You couldn't surely have the blinkers down. You guys you're top notch. Crikey, nothing's get past you.
So Senator certainly can take on notice the question in respect of those visa holders from 2016.
Yep.
Again,
And the one that
only
really-
speak in general terms about how we handle information and allegation. We certainly work with a whole range of local
Well, they were fined.
agencies.
These people were fined and left the country. I think it was a measly couple of grand fine. I'd hate to think that they'd run someone over, but anyway. All right, let me just go back to this because I'm running out of time. So, in all defence to yourself, so I have to read that there was a letter that I also got back as the chair of the committee. And I will take the time just to read. It's not long, and it says, "Dear Chair, thank you for your letter of the 30th of March 2016 to the Secretary of the Department of Immigration and Border Protection, Mr Michael Pizzullo, requesting that the Department launch an urgent investigation into the misuse of student visas to employ people in the trucking industry. The Secretary has asked me to reply on his behalf. Student visa holders," well, that talks about student visa holders may work in any capacity, which I know. We know all that. I'll skip through that. But it says here, the department is currently undertaking investigative activity in regards to the misuse of the student visa program, targeting employers, education providers and other facilitators of breaches under the Migration Act of 1958 and associated regulations. It is not appropriate for me to comment or provide further information in relation to these operational matters. And it's signed by Christine Dacey, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Visa and Citizenship Management Division of the Department. Is Miss Dacey still Acting First Assistant Secretary, or has she been promoted?
I don't think she's in the department any longer, Senator. I think she's in a different department.
And the sad part about this, Mr Willard, Commander Biddington and Mr Brezzo, is that much of a secret. No one told you coming to this Senate committee today that this letter was written and penned to me. And the Senator may even ask what's happened since that letter was written in 2016. Do you have any comment?
Senator, I wasn't aware of the letter. I'm happy to take on notice.
And Mr Willard, you're not in trouble, all right? Because this is an absolute another insult, nothing to see here. Operational matters. The only thing wasn't mentioned is on water because it was on the bitumen. And this is the disrespect that this committee has received from this department, not you people. Miss Dacey and whoever ticked off on her superiors. Mr Pizzullo is still there. What happened to the good old days when the buck stopped with me at the top of the chain? And I'm going to leave you. I know you can't answer this. Can you? And I'm not going to ask any what's the word? What do they call it? Yeah, but coffee. Hypotheticals. That's it. I was thinking hyperventilating. That's what I'm doing. Hypotheticals. But how can I have faith that Mr Pizzullo is the director and there's the boss direct link to the minister is even giving the minister the right advice? Gentlemen, are you able to tell me, now that it's been 5 years, if you had any information of any activity of undertaking investigative activities in regards to the misuse of the student visa program, targeting employers, education providers and other facilitators of breaches under the Migration Act of 1958 and associated regulations?
Senator, only in general terms, as I've talked about,
Not road transport.
We do, only in general terms, we do look at all investigations, whether it be in transport or in other sectors, and we do look at whether there's grounds for action under the Migration Act in respect of misuse of visa programs. It's a key priority for us.
Gentlemen, just do me one favour. When you go back and debrief, can you just go and kick someone in the pants for sending you here to put you through this? because that is the disrespect from the ones above you. Absolutely disrespectful. And I'll leave you on one thing. We have your boss out there, Mr. Pizzulo, calling the dogs of war in the weekend paper, and let's get ready for war. I'm going to tell you, gentlemen, take this back, please. It's in all sincerity. There's a war going on, and it's on our highways. Okay? Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you, Chair.